Hey, this is Helen Paradise from SoCal, and you are listening to the Barbecue Central Show.
Start the game! Let's go!
We'll do it live. Okay. Well, do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
So to get that perfect barbecue, you use wood. Are you sure it's safe? Whatever. We put the lighter fluid on, strike the match, and... Oh! Should we call the fire department? That might be a good idea.
Good evening and welcome to the Really Big Barbecue Central Show. This is the show that talks about all things that are important in the world of barbecue and grilling. This show originates from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame city, Bomb City, USA, Cleveland, Ohio, the barbecue capital of the North Coast. I'm your program host, Greg Rempe. Happy to have you aboard here on your Tuesday evening's live fire fun and frivolity show. If you'd like to get in contact with the show or you want to follow the show during off-show hours, here's how you do all that.
You can get in touch with the show by sending an email to Greg at bbqcentralshow.com. Follow us on all the social media channels at BBQ Central Show. And be sure to subscribe to the show podcast feed on your favorite podcast platform.
Anything else you want to find out about the show this evening can be found at the main website, thebbqcentralshow.com. And here's what's happening in case you get the newsletter. Coming up in about 12 minutes from now, a second Tuesday of the month brings a visit from the long-standing second Tuesday of the month, 14 past the first hour guest, Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. And we're going to be talking about a topic that comes up semi-frequently. I don't even usually want to talk about it. However, it was brought up during the show last week during Sam the Cooking Guy segment, and then it was also brought up once again in Malcolm Reed's How to Barbecue Right podcast on Friday. And I thought, let's put this bitch to bed once and for all. We'll bring the expert on, we'll talk about it, and that is this. Is the meat closest to the bone more flavorful? That's what we're going to be talking about in depth tonight with the one and only Meathead, and he has all the information, all the science, all the proof to let you know if you've been always thinking the correct way or if you're like the majority of folks and you're dope and you've been thinking it the wrong way because you've decided to live in the bubble that you live in. So we're going to dispel all myth, rumors, and or otherwise 14 past the hour, and then we will move to 35 past the hour, and we'll be joined by the second Tuesday of the month in the second interview spot in the third hour, Robert Moss. And tonight we're tackling the second of 10 topics that will take us through the balance of 2024, and we're talking about cooking methods and how they have developed in the South, Southern Style BBQ. Was there a definitive opening style? And then how have those evolved over the decades and the centuries and all this other stuff? And there's a bunch of information. You might think that's probably not going to yield a lot of great information and content, but you're wrong. We've outlined it all, and you're going to be shocked at what you're going to learn 35 past the hour. Of course, no surprise with Dr. Robert Moss. And then we'll move to the second hour, and we will find a typical embedded correspondent, longest running one from Texas, but he's showing up in new rub seller and purveyor Doug Scheiding Rogue Cookers, launching a few new rubs just recently. So we're going to talk to how he got in all of that and what's it been like and the hang-up processes that he's been running up against. Very excited to talk to him about this whole jaunt into this portion of the live fire industry. And then closing it out this evening, somebody who has opened the show twice in successive weeks over the past few weeks. He is the former operator of Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue. We will welcome the current operator of Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue, Joe Martinez. If you followed along, you understand there. So Meathead, Robert Moss, first hour, and Doug Scheiding, Joe Martinez, second hour. We say if you would like to follow me socially, you can visit Instagram and X and TikTok and Snapchat, all at BBQ Central Show. We also say good evening to those of you watching tonight through one of our video streaming platforms. You can go to Facebook.com/BBQ Central Show or Twitter.com/BBQ Central Show. Or you can take it in through YouTube, which is YouTube.com/@BBQ Central Show. And we have a new YouTube poll question of the week. It's simple, it's to the point, and it's this. Do you like Curry? Not Steph, not Seth, not the older statesman Curry, Del Curry, not talking about NBA players, current and former. We're talking about the spice Curry. And currently, wow, it's changed rapidly here over the last 45 seconds. We are at a dead heat of 50-50. 50% of you like it, 50% of you say no. Now, let me just agree with 50% of you, and we'll leave it at that. Results of the poll last week, I asked everybody, you know who Caitlin Clark is, and 62% said yes, 38% said no, and I assume that percentage might be a little bit higher after the weekend that happened just this past in Big Ten women's basketball. So I had somewhere where I was going to start, and it's not the one where I was going to start the last couple weeks because Joe has dominated the last couple weeks. Instead, I'm going to throw caution to the wind and put my neck out on the line. I was sent a piece of information by rule number 1 of the show, no names please, although I have this on highly credible sourcing. Of course, we're talking about SmokeSlam.
Here comes the money. Here comes the money.
That's right. For immediate release, although from what I'm seeing, it shouldn't be read until tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. But I'm throwing caution to the wind. I don't play it safe, not on this show. If you're sending me something live, local, and late breaking, it's going to happen here on the show. I don't know what else to tell you. And I had a great open, but I'm foregoing that. Dateline, Memphis, Tennessee. Tomorrow, Memphis Mempho Presents will announce that the first annual SmokeSlam Barbecue Festival has finalized its capacity list of 59 participating teams for the 3-day event that will take place from May 16th to the 18th, 2024. Yes, the same weekend as Memphis in May. However, this one will be taking place at Tom Lee Park, as we know. Additionally, the World Junior Barbecue League, the philanthropic organization founded by 7-time World Barbecue Champion and Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer, Melissa Cookston, will host a youth barbecue competition awarding $25,000 in prizes at the festival. It's nothing but money there, folks. There's all kinds of money. Money here, money there, money everywhere. So, poignant notes to just recap if you're joining the show. There will be 59 total teams at SmokeSlam. 32 will be competing in all 3 categories. Those consisting of whole hog, ribs, and pulled pork. There's also a total of 33 teams that are competing in just whole hog alone, 46 teams in pulled pork alone, and 56 teams in ribs. That's typically how it shakes out. A lot of teams do ribs because they feel they're easiest to cook, easy to practice on, not horribly expensive, typically the second most popular in a Memphis-style competition, whether it be MBN or Memphis in May, is going to be your pulled pork. And then the fewest teams do whole hog, but at 60 total teams, half the teams are doing whole hog, so that's a pretty good statistical participation of whole hogging. And, of course, the thing goes on to talk a little bit more about World Junior Barbecue League, which is, again, run by or founded by Melissa Cookston. She talked about that the last time she was on the show. And 59 total teams competing in Smoke Slam. I thought it would be cresting towards 100, but well short of that, about 41 short of that to be specific. And again, spacing all out between the three categories. $25,000 in prizes for World Junior Barbecue League. That's a pretty big payday for those youths. I don't want to say kid. I mean, they're kids. They're not like 4 years old. So a little live, local, and late-breaking embargoed news, in case you didn't want to wait until tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't anybody tell on me and get me in trouble now. I want to be seen as a rebel rouser. Anyway, it's gone, and who knows who sent it to me? I don't know. Rhymes with rule number 1 of the show. Take it at that. Meathead is ready to go. We'll get to him here in just 1 second. Before we do that, I'll talk to you about the latest sponsor of the show, Schwank Grills. Look, the statistics are in, folks, and already you've looked, you've decided to save money, and you've pulled the trigger, a number of you, over the past week. Thank you very much. I mean, I'm not getting anything out of it, but appreciate you supporting the show sponsors, of course. Now, if you're not familiar with Schwank Grills, here's what you need to know. It is a liquid propane or natural gas connected cooker. You decide which one. I always choose propane because I don't want to forget to choose to shut the natural gas off and then wonder why my natural gas bill is through the roof. Highly portable, so as long as you take fuel with you, this unit will travel along with you easily. The unit heats up to 1,500 degrees. It uses infrared burner technology. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second, but what does it mean to you? Now you can cook the juiciest and most flavorful steaks in 3 minutes or 4 minutes, depending on how thick the steak is. No more wasting your life cooking your proteins all day long. No. Schwank Grills does it quickly and does it with restaurant quality results. By the way, this infrared burner technology, Schwank Grills is also in some of the highest end steak restaurants in the country. For instance, Morton's Steakhouse, Del Frisco's, Cut 432, just to name a couple. Remember, at 1,500 degrees, you can build a delicious crust on both sides of the steak without overcooking it, and the steak winds up incredibly juicy and flavorful. Truly no other grill like it on the market. Some are calling it the future of grilling. Maybe you're going to be one of those too when you put it in the backyard. You want a deal? I'm here to deal as well. I know you guys. So try this. Go to schwankgrills.com, SCHWANK grills.com. And then there's your checking out. Add whatever gas supply you want. Use promo code BBQ Central. You can save $150 off any Schwank grill. That's right. BBQ Central when you visit schwankgrills.com. You can also go to the Barbecue Central Show's homepage, click on the logo to get over from there. You can click on the link through the newsletter, a number of different ways. Look for it in the show notes here on this podcast. schwankgrills.com, proud sponsor of the show. We're back with Meathead right after this. Stick around.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Broadcasting live from the Barbecue Central Show studios in Cleveland, Ohio. You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
We welcome you back to the show. This portion, of course, brought to you by cookandpellets.com, your number one source for quality wood pellets for all your pellet-driven cookers. See what they have there, and then when you're ready to buy, head on over to Amazon.com or Lowe's.com or Walmart.com. Same great products, tremendous shipping rates that they can't offer at cookandpellets.com. Told to be by Chris Becker, who we're trying to line up for an interview. So continue to support them as you have for years and years. Good folks over at cookandpellets.com. My first guest tonight created and runs the most heavily trafficked barbecue and grilling website on the face of the earth, a best-selling author, a barbecue Hall of Famer, a Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer. I am, of course, talking about our pal, monthly contributor, Meathead from AmazingRibs.com. Meathead, before we get going here tonight, we have a YouTube poll question of the week. I'm pretty sure where you're going to fall out on this question, but it's very simple, straight to the point. Do you like curry? Yes or no?
Yes.
I'm a no. And currently,
and you called it a spice. It's not a spice.
60% of the YouTube voting public do not like curry, and it's not a spice. So correct me, please.
It's a spice blend. It's a mix of multiple spices. So if you want, you could call it a spice.
It's a rub.
But it's no more. Yes, exactly. It's a rub. It's a rub.
All right.
I like it in context. You know, there are some dishes it works very well with, and other dishes I wouldn't put it on pulled pork.
Much like onions, I have tried it and tried it again and tried it again and tried it again. Onions? And are you kidding?
I'm signing off.
You didn't know I didn't like onions?
No, I thought I knew everything about you.
Oh, yeah. It's been a hot topic for the last 5 years. You listen much?
Oh, dear. No, I thought I knew your hat size, your pant size. Yes. I didn't know you didn't like onions.
No, that's a discussion that we'll save for a different evening. But 60% of the folks are saying no to curry. Acquired taste, I would say, unless you come up in that kind of a setting as well. So aside from the YouTube poll.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Isn't there a very good barbecue cook out of California named Curry? A woman?
Who?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, Sylvie Curry.
I think she's good.
Yes, of course. Sylvie Curry.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, she's good, I hear.
Took me a second. Yeah, she wins grand championships. Lady of Q is her competition team. I could give you her whole rundown, of course, but she is fiery and sweet like a rub, but she is definitely a cooking competitor, no doubt about it. All right, so we have a huge topic this evening, Meathead, and it's set it forward by a small conversation that I had last week with Sam, the cooking guy, and myself.
I heard it.
Oh, you heard the whole thing?
I heard the whole thing.
All right, so this was really started by a take that Malcolm Reed had, which was he thought that meat was... Well, Sam and I don't seem to agree on how we remember this happening. Nevertheless, the point of the matter is this. I hear a lot, and I continually hear it. Meat by the bone is more flavorful than the meat that is away from the bone, and we're tackling it headlong tonight. I don't even know where the hell you want to start, but let's go.
Okay. The bone affects the way the meat cooks, but it affects it from a temperature standpoint. The bone is a sheath of calcium. It can be as much as a 1/4 inch thick on either side. So that could be as much as a 1/2 inch of calcium. And then the center is filled with mostly fat and water, and that's very, very flavorful. But it can't get through the calcium. It can't get into the meat. So what the bone does is it blocks heat from hitting the meat on the side that the bone lives. So the meat closest to the bone is going to be a little less cooked or undercooked or rarer. So if you're cooking the medium rare, let's say you're shooting for 135 in the center, it will likely be 125 to 130 next to the bone. Whereas on the opposite side, it could be 140. So you have a range of temperatures running from rare to medium in one ribeye. I'm speaking of a ribeye now, which is
of course
the most common. Chicken and chicken ribs are another story altogether. So the bone is going to have a thermal effect more than it is going to have any kind of a flavor effect. But because the meat is less cooked, it will feel and taste different.
Here's a question that I'm sure nobody's asking, but they don't want to believe what we're talking about. How come all the flavorfulness that you described that's in the center of the bone can't get through the bone? What prevents this? Because I think people want to believe that no matter what, some of it is getting out.
There's a 1/4 inch thick calcium sheath around it. I mean, that's thick. It just can't penetrate. How does it get out? But if you do, say, short ribs in a crock pot or in a stew, the liquid, the wine and the water, can extract some of that marrow and melt it and pull it into the liquid so that when you serve the stew, the short ribs, it has the flavor from that marrow. And that's an important process. That's wet cooking. But dry cooking, which is what we do on a grill or a smoker or in an oven, it just can't get out. It doesn't affect the flavor other than from a thermal standpoint. It's likely to be less cooked. Otherwise, the real fun part of the leaving the bone in is gnawing on the bone, because the backside of the bone, the bare side of the bone, is likely to get really good and dark and char. And if you leave the membrane on, that can be fun. I mean, gnawing on a rib bone is just a lot of fun. I prefer to what I love to do when it comes to beefsteaks is I love to buy a huge rib primal, which is 7 bones, and $300 and up for choice and more for prime. And then I cut the whole slab of ribs off. And then I will slice that chunk of meat into ribeye steaks. I'll usually cut them about 1.5 inches. Maybe I'll cut a few thinner. But now I have ribeye steaks, or I'll leave maybe 4 or 5 inches for a roast, whatever. You have this huge ribeye roast. And then that bone section, I will grill or smoke them actually separately. And they're really good that way. And because there's meat between the bones. And if you want, when you remove the bones, you can leave a little meat on top of the bone. As you know, it's a butchery issue. But those babies are fun. I absolutely adore them.
Does connective tissue and associated fat add measurable flavor to the meat as it renders during the cooking process?
Yeah, well, connective tissue between the bones. And I mean, rib bones and the rib section, those are really hardworking muscles. And they have to contain the lungs and the heart. And so there's a lot of important things they do. And there's a lot of connective tissue. So it by itself, if you just took a beef rib section and threw it on the grill, it's going to be delicious. It's going to be tough as shoe leather. So you do want to cook it low and slow to tenderize it, get it way up there in the 190 to 200 degree range. But it's marvelous. It's delicious. It's succulent. It's full of flavor and fat. Now, the membrane is another issue. The membrane on beef is physically very different than the membrane on pork. The membrane on pork, as you know, is very thin. And if you leave it on, it can get crispy. And some people really like it. Most people don't. And generally, I remove it out of respect to my guests. I don't want them to have to fight with it. It doesn't really affect the flavor, smoke penetration, rub penetration, or anything significant. Despite what you've read, it's just not really a barrier to flavor. But on beef ribs, if you remove that membrane, the meat is very likely to fall off the bone. That membrane's important to hold it on there. So you leave it on. Now, if you're cooking it in a wet system, if you're cooking it in a crock pot or a Dutch oven with typically your classic Provençal French style with a red wine and a bunch of herbs and everything, that the flavors in that connective tissue, that membrane, really flavor the juice and the whole process. That membrane, by the way, is the pleura, Pleura, and that's the membrane. You've heard of pleurisy. That's the membrane that contains the lungs and the heart on the sides and the top. On the bottom, it's the diaphragm.
Hmm.
But that pleura is very important for the survival of the animal.
When you talk about dry cooking and wet cooking, and you gave examples of both, where does sous vide fall into that?
Well, sous vide's a wet cooking method.
Wet cooking. All right.
No doubt about it. When you put food in that bag, it extracts liquid. A lot of people talk about the juiciness of sous vide, and the food does come out very juicy. But often there's a lot of liquid in that bag.
Yeah.
And don't try to make a sauce out of it. It's just full of albumin and protein and myoglobin, coagulates, just gets ugly. But it pulls a lot of liquid out. It is almost a stewing technique.
Can we draw a conclusion then, knowing what we know now, where the meat closest to the bone isn't cooking, that people are perceiving more flavor because the meat just happens to be tender, and tenderness and flavor in the mind want to work together? So that's like, where does this saying even come from? I just diverged off the question I was asking, but do you have any idea?
There was a classic old song from the 30s, I think. Maybe it was Spike Jones. Closer to the bone, the tender the meat. It's a YouTube it. Check on you. Closer to the bone, the sweeter the meat. That's the line lyric. Yeah. Closer to the bone, the sweeter the meat. I don't find it more tender. I mean, when you get down into really rare meat, it can get kind of stringy. It gets in between your teeth. When you get it up into medium rare, I think it's more tender. It doesn't have the stringiness that rare meat has. I'm a medium rare guy. If you're a rare guy, then you're going to like that meat closer to the bone. I mean, it's a matter of preference, but I don't think it's more tender. It's just less cooked.
Yeah.
And it can be 5 to 10 degrees less cooked.
Anything else do we need to know about meat and bones and being more flavorful?
Well, I mean, the whole topic of beef ribs is such fun because, as you know, you get down into Texas, you get these dinosaur ribs. They come from the plate, which is the front section of the rib section. And they're usually 4 bones, really thick meat, 2 inches on one end and maybe a little as an inch on the other. It has that really tough, leathery membrane underneath. But, oh, my goodness, isn't that special stuff? It's like, brisket on a stick. Then I just did this 2 or 3 nights ago. I got some Korean beef ribs, which are cross sections. So you get it's like really thick bacon. It's maybe 1/4 inch thick, cut across the bone. So think of a slab of bacon that's a 1/4 inch thick, and it has 4 oval-shaped bones in it. These are the ends of the rib bones, and
do they call those flanken ribs as well?
That's exactly right. They're called flanken. You're absolutely right, Greg. You know your meat. Of course, one would expect you to.
Of course.
And those are flanken ribs, and the Koreans love those. Mexicans love them a lot too. And I did a really nifty Korean marinade and grilled them off hot and fast, and they were really good. They were a lot of fun. That's flanken. You can get riblets, which are maybe 2 inches long of bone with the meat on top. They're real. That's typically what you get in a French restaurant in the stew. There's just all kinds of fun things one can do with the rib section. And just think about pork. Everybody knows about back ribs and side ribs, or St. Louis cut or side ribs. You have the same situation with beef ribs. Your back ribs are attached to the prime rib, and the meat there is all between the bones. It's usually there's not a lot of meat on top of the bones, but as you move further down into the side ribs, you get a lot more meat on top, and they're just fun. I have a full article. Forgive me for promoting. Go to AmazingRibs.com and type beef ribs into the search box, and you'll see an article with pictures of each of the different sections and cuts and links to some fun recipes.
Are you still dumping on cast iron?
I don't remember having talked to you about that. I have. I have
You made quite a charge against, saying that it was dirty and perhaps unhealthy.
I have fallen out of love with cast iron, and I know that's going to get a lot of enemies out there, both as a grill grate and also as a frying pan.
I've never liked them as grill grates. I think they're
Pardon?
trouble. I've never liked raw cast iron for grill
agree.
grates. They're trouble.
They're impossible to clean. They rust, and I want radiant heat to hit the meat as much as possible. So I'm not a cast iron grilled grate fan, and I have fallen out of love with my cast iron pan. I have a full set of cast iron. I have cast iron griddles and I have cast iron pans. I have fallen in love with these new ceramic coated pans.
Like what?
And also, I have a ceramic coated griddle, and they are, if the ceramic is prepared properly, they're non-stick, and they're as slippery as a ski slope. And they're not great for creating fond, but one of the problems with cast iron pans. Oh boy, I'm just going to get the hate mail now, Greg.
Good, let's go. You bet.
Cast iron is relatively porous on the surface, which is why you oil it and you create a seasoning on it. And if you've got a cast iron frying pan at home and you've seasoned it properly, go pull it out now, get a paper towel and wipe that surface. And when you do, it'll come up brown. Why?
Oil.
Because that oil is oxidizing, rancidifying. It's getting rancid. And it's also trapped a lot of the flavors of whatever you cooked in it last. I mean, God forbid you cook fish in it and then you come back and do eggs in it. I mean, give me a stainless steel pan where I can see when I'm done with it, it is spit spot clean. There's no flavor left behind. And or a ceramic pan, which is really, I mean, the surfaces are usually light enough that I can see that they're clean. Anybody who's listened to me with you over the years knows I married a microbiologist. I'm sensitive about food safety, but I'm also sensitive about flavor. And I don't want what I cooked last week in my food that I cook tonight. So, and the other thing is I'm getting old, and my wife is too, and she has trouble handling cast iron pans. They're heavy. She's in the next room. I'm whispering.
Yeah.
They're heavy.
Yeah.
And they're awkward. These ceramic pans. If you haven't played with them, go to AmazingRibs.com and in the search box type omelet and watch my very, very short video about how I make omelets. There's a really interesting trick. There's a secret ingredient in my omelets.
Curry?
And no. Oh. no. Curry could be good in eggs.
Sure.
But I'd cook them in a ceramic pan and watch how that baby slides around and slides out, and how I make a beautiful French omelet in a ceramic pan. I know it's not grilling.
Give me a name brand. What am I looking for ceramic? Is that Hexclad or some shit?
There's a whole bunch of brands. I've been using the brand called Greenpad. I just yesterday saw an ad. I think Guy Fieri has introduced a new line.
It's Fieri, by the way. Fieri.
Pardon?
It's Fieri.
Fieri. Yeah, Fieri. And I don't know if they're ceramic. He's touting them as nonstick.
Yeah.
But, oven safe and all that. So I'm interested to hear what they're all about. But I use green pans, and I haven't used other brands. Yeah. So I'm not comparison testing, and I'm not endorsing. But I've bought green pan, and I actually recommend, I think it's the Valencia. They have a whole bunch of different lines.
Green Pan Valencia line. That's the name of it, though. Green Pan.
Yeah, it's called Green Pan Valencia line.
All right.
They have a whole bunch of lines, price radic. In any case, go watch the video of the omelets if you're interested in this. And they're not heavy. They're substantial. They're aluminum based. And they cook beautifully, and I absolutely adore them.
You can get all this great information at the website Meathead just told you, and that you're looking at underneath Meathead's name, AmazingRibs.com. Also, we have finally put to rest the meat being more flavorful, closer to the bone nonsense. So stop talking about it and perpetuating bad information. And on the second Tuesday of every month at 14 past the first hour, you will find Meathead right here talking about all sorts of live fire topics and other stuff, should it see fit. Meathead, anything else before I let you go?
Yeah, what's going on with the Hall of Fame? I know you're plugged into them more than anyone. I haven't heard anything about this year's nominations or anything. I mean, what do we got to do? I have asked you. I know you're a modest fellow, although it doesn't come across.
I
the
prefer
radio.
humble.
Okay, humble fellow. I've asked you to send me your goddamn resume because they ask for that on their website when you nominate somebody.
They ask for a resume?
Send me your CV. So when I want to talk about you, I have, I mean, I can say he was a proud graduate of Greenbrier Kindergarten, and that's as far as he went. And and but really, when one looks at the Hall of Fame, there's a number of people who belong. There's really only 35 living members now,
right?
And there are a bunch of folks out there who belong in, and I could name some that I think belong in, but certainly you do, especially in the communications world. And they don't have a lot. Many of the members are competition cooks, and that's wonderful. But it's a very specialized world. Stephen Reichlin, who you have on regularly, and myself, and a few others are in the communications world. So are you. And there's nobody out there. Jeff Tracy does a really good radio show, and he should be considered as well. But nobody. But you are the most influential. You are the most influential person on the airwaves, and you belong in there. I mean, it's just a travesty you aren't in yet. And I've been doing this for a year now or more. The Chiron at the bottom of the screen here. You've never commented on it, humble that you are.
What am I going to say?
It just seems to me that, get me your CV so I can make sure that they have all the vital information and they understand your import to the world of barbecue.
Meathead, you certainly know how to make me blush. You've had that skill right along, and you certainly haven't dulled at it, so I appreciate your kind words. And again, everybody go see Meathead, AmazingRibs.com, the website, of course, and we'll see you back here in April, believe it or not.
And I think in April,
yes,
I'm going to have a big news item for you. I mean, big.
I think I know what you're talking about, and I think I want to start taking action.
Yeah, I've hinted at it, and the deal is coming down.
Oh,
we're this close. We're this close.
Well, now I don't know if we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
we talking about?
Let me give a hint. Let me give a hint. We are this close to buying an important website.
I don't even know what you're talking about now.
Aha!
This close
and it's not
to buying an important.
It's not Barbecue
website.
Central show.
Nailed that. What important website are you going to buy? Smoked barbecue sauce?
I may give you some clues off the air. I can't say any more than that.
All right. Well,
but it's really cool, and I wouldn't even whisper about it if it weren't this close.
Wow. All right. Well, I can't wait to see what we might be talking about as the lead topic in April, but I look forward to it. A teaser, as always, as you leave us. It's Meathead from AmazingRibs.com right there. Absolutely. Well, what my mind is spinning. I have all these guesses all of a sudden that are popping up in my head, but we'll have to wait. Maybe Robert Moss has a guess. We'll levy it to him. We'll start making guesses. By the way, the poll is just one even again. If you can believe it. Before we get to Robert, let's talk about Pits and Spits. By the way, if you are at the Houston Livestock and Rodeo in Houston, like at the NRG Stadium, evidently it's still going on. Maybe even for a couple more weeks. Our boys Pits and Spits are there exhibiting. Today, Ryan was showing the new built-in that they have, the new pellet smoker, the 304 stainless, the heavy gauge lids and body construction. However, if you are ready to step up that barbecue and grilling game, you need to add the pits and spits to the backyard. Tonight we're talking about we're talking about charcoal grills. They offer the highest quality live fire cooking experience you can get in the market today. Using either wood or charcoal, their solid fuel grills produce those classic flavors you're looking for when you have the time to fire up the grill and cook for family and friends. And with a large adjustable fuel tray, you can raise and lower the fire to control and fine-tune the heat. Their take on the very popular Santa Maria style grill. Check them out online, pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. And when you're spelling out Pits and Spits, it's the double T on the Pits and Spits, pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central. And then use promo code Charcoal Central, and you get $150 off any charcoal grill that you buy online. They'll ship it to you, and you're going to have some great fun and a lifelong cooker. How about that? pitsandspits.com/BBQ Central, code Charcoal Central for $150 off any charcoal grill over at the website. Or if you go to perhaps one of their dealers, maybe they give you the same type of thing. But again, if you're in and around the Houston area, you're checking out the Houston Livestock and Rodeo, don't forget to check out Pits and Spits. They're live, local, and late breaking, exhibiting right there on the showroom floor, as it were. We're back with Robert Moss right after this. Stick around. Be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rampey. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
And we thank Meathead for joining us last segment. This portion of the show being brought to you by Fireboard 2, Fireboard 2 Drive. Monitors up to 6 different temperatures simultaneously, connects to your Wi-Fi for cloud-based monitoring. If you want to connect through Bluetooth, you can. If you have smart speakers in your home, there's a good chance that Fireboard integrates with all of those. Find out more by visiting fireboard.com or call 816-945-2232. I'm continuing to learn and try out and fall deeper in love with my Fireboard 2 Drive product that I got a couple months ago. So if you are in the market, make sure that you give first priority and check to our folks at Fireboard. My next guest, the contributing barbecue editor for Southern Living Magazine, 2023's Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer. We welcome back our pal, Robert Moss. Robert, we have a YouTube poll question of the week. It's gone a little off 50-50 as it was just sitting as we were getting into the read there for Pits and Spits. Do you like curry? Yes or no?
Yes, I love curry. It's one I really like it a lot.
All right. Meathead said that I called it a spice. He said I wasn't necessarily correct. It was an amalgamation of other things. Do you classify it as a spice?
It's not a standalone spice. It's a spice blend. But the thing about curry is that it's really just a collection of the sort of spices that define Indian cuisine. So curry is more of a sauce, and curry spice is the spices that characterize that. And that can be all sorts of different things like cardamom and turmeric and all these wonderful spices. So typically if you buy what's called curry spice, that's actually a blend of 6 or more spices.
Is that something you grew up in and liked, or did you fall in love with it after the fact?
Absolutely did not grow up with it. I don't think people in Greenville, South Carolina had any idea, that those are strange flavors. But I sort of have fallen in love with Indian cuisine over the years, both here in the U.S. as more and more Indian restaurants have cropped up, but also traveling to India. And I spent a lot of time in London where there are great Indian restaurants. And that's probably where I first sort of really took a liking to those flavors. So curry, I don't think of as a single spice, but as sort of this set of flavors that I really like.
Any idea what website Meathead and AmazingRibs.com is?
No,
so
I was
close
listening
to
to
mine?
Tom and I was like, which one could it be? And I really don't know.
All right, I'm going to go on record right now. Let's go. I mean, there's betting. You can bet on all sports games at all times now, so I'm going to lay my money down. I think he's going to buy smoked barbecue sauce. You ever heard of it?
I have never heard of it. So
it appears to be a very popular website, according to Derek Riches, who for years had tracked whatever the 10 most popular websites were, and it's always been Susie Bullock's website from Hey Girl Hey, And then it has always been smoked barbecue sauce, and then Meathead is typically in the first 5 or so, much to his chagrin that he's not number 1, but Derek uses a different measuring on what's popular versus most trafficked. So that's my thought. I could be way off base here, but we'll see next month. So before we get into the topic tonight, I wanted to mention that last month we were talking about the evolution of barbecue meats. The one that you mentioned as being popular back then, but has certainly fallen out of the popularity favor now, is lamb in some form or another. And then over the next many weeks, I saw people posting about the history of lamb and how much they love lamb and all of these lamb-inspired posts that I have never seen before. So I can only draw one conclusion, Robert. We have begun to set trends on topics for social media jerks to steal and make it look like they're coming up with it. But we know who started the trend again. It's us.
Yeah,
and we have
that's
a great.
The only explanation.
That's
it must be us.
It has to be.
And
us.
I think if we see, and curry and lamb go well together. So we see a lot of lamb curry recipes cropping up in the next month, that will sort of seal the deal.
We'll watch the trends on social media and we'll see what happens. The topic for tonight is examining the evolution of cooking methods in Southern barbecue. So it seems from its face to be a wide sweeping topic, and I'm wondering if it is.
Is it wide and sweeping?
Yes.
Yes, there's lots to talk about there, I think, for sure. And certainly maybe deep and sweeping, because this, you have to go way back and sort of it I think, like we talked about last time, it sort of talks about when you're talking about history, because barbecue has changed an awful lot in the last 200 years. And so the cooking techniques were very, very different in the 19th century than in the middle 20th century, and of course very different from today. So it's definitely a deep topic.
When we look at it for as far back as you can trace it, is there both a singular and accepted origin method that you can find that defines Southern barbecue before it then starts to grow different heads and spread and change?
And yes, absolutely. I mean, we may have touched about it a little bit last time, but and it's really not just even Southern barbecue, though barbecue did sort of start in the South. But by the middle of the 19th century, it was almost a national tradition. So all the way to Texas, out to California, up into the Midwest, you had barbecues that were all very, very similar. And the cooking technique was almost identical, whether you were in Virginia, you're in Texas, you're in California, you were down in Georgia. The 19th century barbecue was very much defined by a single type of cooking, which was an outdoor method of cooking, direct heat over pits dug into the ground, and cooked, whole animals, or if in the case of maybe cows, split animals, cooked over direct coals on iron bars, over coals that had burned down from hardwood in these 18-inch, 2 feet deep pits. And if and the cooking technique is very much the same from throughout the South and throughout the entire country. The meat was typically basted with sort of a spicy basting sauce as it cooked, but the technique was almost the same regardless of where you were.
As things start to progress, time wears on. How do the different cooking methods come up, if that's even a good question to ask?
Yeah, well, as barbecue evolved over time, especially as you got to the 20th century, it went from being this outdoor tradition. It was cooked occasionally, these big outdoor feasts, really. And at the end of the 19th century, going into the 20th century, it became also a commercial product. So guys who were barbecue cooks would start cooking a little barbecue, selling it on the weekends. The original barbecue restaurants, barbecue stands, really, they're just one of these rude stands on the side of the road or on a downtown street corner. They were actually still cooking in a hole in the ground, just very much like back in the 19th century, until the health department started catching up with them. But if you start doing a business, it's one thing to cook it that way, every 4th of July for a big party or a big community celebration. It's another thing if you want to make that a day in, day out business. So a couple of things you see is that what used to be a hole in the ground, they started to elevate with a pit, which is you just build it up with brick or cinder blocks, 3 or 4 feet up, put the bars across, but you still cook it the same way. You shovel coals up onto the bars, put the animals, whole hogs or sheep or lamb or whatever you have up on top, and cook it that way. That really was the way through the 1920s, 1930s, and then as barbecue restaurants became more formal businesses, then you start to see the evolution of a lot of different styles of pits. And that's where I think today you still see the great variation in cooking technique from places like Eastern North Carolina. If you think of Sam Jones and Skylight Inn, or Sam Jones Barbecue, or Rodney Scott and Scott's Barbecue, to the Piedmont barbecue restaurants in the Piedmont, North Carolina, very different kind of pit. We can talk about the different kinds. Memphis is different. Texas is different. Kansas City is different. Alabama has their own style. So that all sort of developed in the middle part of the 20th century as barbecue went from a, sort of a free outdoor public celebration to a product of commerce, and restaurants really, formalized and became permanent businesses.
So as you talk about advancements, you talk about the pits. Let's dig into that a little bit. Let's talk about how a pit might vary and what kind of a barbecue you might get from one pit to the next.
Yeah, and it's funny, you call them pits, right? But a pit is a hole in the ground, which is, where it all started. But nobody's digging. Well, very few people are digging holes in the ground and cooking on anymore. A pit is literally, well, originally it was something that was raised above ground, and then it becomes like a offset barbecue pit, something you drag behind a trailer. So
now pit's $12,000.
That's right. Yeah. They have gotten a lot more expensive over time, for sure. Yeah. If you go to the Carolinas and you go to some of the old whole hog places, you will find pits that are probably closest to what they were like in the early 20th century. Again, I'll refer back to like a Skylight Inn, which is really just cinder blocks with rebar going across it, basically a grid that raises the meat up, a couple feet above just a dirt floor. They burn all the wood down to coals in a chimney or a barrel outside, and then shovel it under the meat. It's a direct heat method of cooking, which is really important because the coals are actually underneath the meat, radiating heat up. Some of the juices drip down on the coals and steam and do all that. Very different than your offset pits like you would get from your typical Texas style pit. And that really is sort of the early evolution of it. When you move up into the Piedmont, North Carolina, you get these really unique, and once you see them, you recognize them from one place to the next. They're sort of like giant chimneys, these brick pits, and they are built with a big grill, and then it's like a big fireplace with a chimney on top. Again, they burn the wood outside of the pit in a chimney or some other fireplace outside of the pit, bring it and scatter it underneath. Now in the Piedmont, North Carolina, they're not cooking whole hogs, they're cooking pork shoulders, but the same idea. It's 2-3 feet above the coals, direct heat, cooking right there. But the key is that fire is never in the pit. The fire is burning out here, and by the time the coals are burned down to embers, there's not a lot of smoke in the pit. So the barbecue is not smoky at all, which is quite different than what you'll find in Alabama, which has a similar style, but they are actually putting split logs up in that pit with big fire flames. Right, if you go to someplace like Dreamland and in Tuscaloosa or Archibald's, they're cooking ribs over a raging fire, and they cook those ribs in an hour or less because it's really hot heat. So those are very different styles of cooking. I think this evolved over time. Memphis is very similar, except they aren't using split wood. They're using charcoal. Most of the barbecue restaurants in Memphis are burning charcoal in those pits, but it's still a direct heat type of cooking, and it leads to a unique flavor, particularly with charcoal with all the juice dripping on and all that kind of stuff.
So for holding Memphis to the side, since they're using charcoal, everybody else is burning wood in a burn barrel and stoking their pits that way. Is there a wood that one would most associate with Southern style barbecue?
It depends on where you are, and the wood that is associated with the region is pretty much the wood that is most common in that region. So it's almost always either oak or hickory, and sometimes pecan in the South, or pecan if you're not from the South, but pecan, as we say it, at least around these parts. But oak is either red oak or white oak, sort of depending on where you are. And then hickory tends to not be so much down where I am on the eastern side of the Carolinas, but when you get up to the Piedmont North Carolina up toward the mountains. There's lots of hickory wood around there, and hickory sort of the preferred flavor. And then wherever people can get pecan, they'll throw it on the pit as well. But those tend to be the three big meats that you see in the South, at least the Southeast. There is mesquite in Texas, of course, but there is no mesquite in east of the Mississippi, as far as I'm aware. And then in Central Texas, they use post oak, which is a different type of oak. But that's sort of the most common wood out there. So the wood varies, but it's usually whatever the most common hardwood is in the region that you're in.
Not a lot of fruit wood down in the Carolinas, though?
Not a whole lot. No,
Yeah.
you'll see sometimes every now and again some apple wood or whatever, but we don't have a lot of apple trees. There are some apple orchards up around the mountains, but no, if you're cooking with apple wood in this part, you usually get in the bag somewhere, cook in the backyard. You won't see barbecue joints using it just because there's not enough of it to use in that kind of volume.
So as time wears on, we sit here in 2024, we talk about the advancement in technology, growth in population, all that stuff. How much of what we see and eat in today's Southern style barbecue compares to what it was like 100 years ago?
I think it depends upon where you were. So let's roll back about 1924. What would barbecue be like? It certainly does not look like anything that you'd be getting at your typical craft barbecue joint these days. That's an absolutely different type of cooking. So I think of someplace like Fresh Air Barbecue in Jackson, Georgia, which was founded in 1920. So it would have been cooking in 1924. They have a giant, when you first walk in the door, first of all, you smell smoke just overwhelming you as you approach the door. But you step inside, they actually have a giant open brick pit behind the counter that's been there for a long time. They're cooking over direct heat. They're cooking pork, and maybe it's either shoulders or hams. I'm not sure, but they're cooking pieces of pork in there, chopping it up fine. That's probably more likely what you'll get in the 1920s. No brisket back then. Nobody was cooking brisket. That really didn't come around to the 60s or really later 70s when the beef industry started. You started having slaughterhouses that were selling pre-cut beef in pre-cut in portions. The Texas barbecue joints back in the 50s, they were buying like whole 4 quarters of beef, chopping up there. A lot of them were butcher shops. They would sell the good cuts, put the less desirable cuts on the pit. But no, brisket was not even really a thing back then. One of the big things you did not have, as far as I can tell, probably until the 70s or maybe 80s, is really the offset style of cooking. We have the firebox on the side and the big chamber that draws all the smoke through. Some of the Texas joints did like if you look at Kreitz Market or Smitty's, they do have this sort of brick pits with a firebox on the side, and so they were sort of moving toward the offset. But by and large, smoking meat that way in the indirect way of cooking, where the heat's off to the side and you just pulling, or the flame is off to the side, you're pulling heat and smoke across it. That's really a much later thing. So 100 years ago, you would not have found smoked meat like that. It was much more barbecued meat, which is cooked over coals, cooked over direct heat, and generally right on a grate straight over the fire.
Breaking it down as he always does, it's our monthly guest, Robert Moss. You can find him at his website, robertfmoss.com, on social media as well. Robert, appreciate you breaking down this topic, and I'm looking forward to our April topic as we get going.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Greg.
You got it. Robert Moss, killing it as always, giving you your barbecue history lessons that you didn't even know you needed. So, yes. Now, question is, can I get out in 1 minute? We're all going to find out together. Stick around.
Continuing to produce incredibly mediocre content in an exceptionally professional way. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
All right, so far so good. We thank Robert Moss for joining us last segment. robertfmoss.com is his website. And if you missed Meathead, we'll recap all that here in just a few short minutes. We are headed to the second hour. Refresh your libations, and we have a second 60 minutes that'll blow your doors off. You're listening and watching the Barbecue Central Show. Hang on.
This is Dino Dan from Cypress, California, and you're watching the Barbecue Central Show.
Happy to have you aboard here for the really big barbecue show.
We cook because we have to, and we grill because we want to.
Hit me! Fine, how you doing?
You have a great show. I'm a big fan.
Boing.
So what seems to be the problem here? This man looks like he's dead, and he's in the crackle. Charbono! It's all about the charbono, dude!
Succulent fish, what?
He ate 2 feet for wiener.
Oh, listen, Lavernius, shut your face.
I'm shaking like a dog shit peach seeds.
We have top men working on it right now. Top men.
And just like that, we are into the second hour, Barbecue Central Show, where we talk about all the most important barbecue and grilling talk here. The country, the globe. If it's important, we're talking about it. The show originating from
Palm City, USA, Cleveland.
Still to come on the show this evening, our pal Doug Scheiding, the longest-running embedded correspondent hailing from the great state of Texas. Closing the show a little bit later is the operator of Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue, Joe Martinez. You would remember Joe from being the 2023's Focus, the Podgementary from last year, running that food truck. We say good evening to those of you watching tonight through one of our video streaming platforms. You can go to facebook.com/BBQ Central Show. You can go to twitter.com/BBQ Central Show. You can go to youtube.com/@BBQ Central Show. And as always, there is a robust chat going on in YouTube as well. We have a YouTube poll question of the week. We're asking everybody through YouTube and all guests this evening, do you like curry? And currently, 54% of you are saying yes. It's changed. We tip to the second hour, and everybody's thoughts and feelings are now reversed, and we are saying yes, we like curry by the slightest of margins, but nevertheless, the majority is the majority. 56% of you are saying that you are fans of curry. Coming up on the best moments of the Barbecue Central Show in 10 minutes or less this coming Friday, episode 325, taking you back to December 5th, 2017. Being featured this Friday, longtime friends of the show, Dr. Barbecue Ray Lampe. In the show, we talked about, at the time, he was on a radio show in Tampa Bay on a station called The Bone. We talked about his potential attendance at the then 2018 version of Grill Stock over in Bristol, England, I think. Now, that had changed ownership hands, or ownership had changed hands. So John Finch and his partner, the original founders, creators, and putter-oners of that event, had eventually sold it. So we talked about what the potential of his going to Grill Stock under the new ownership. He was open to talking about it, but we also got an update about his, at the time, unopened restaurant, Dr. Barbecue. It seemed like a never-ending saga of things to have to get through in order to open, which it finally did, by the way, to great success until it closed last year, year before. A little unsure about that. But it was fun getting the monthly updates from Ray. And if you're not familiar with Ray, good intro to him, his personality, what he was like as a guest. Not that he's not around anymore, but just don't see him as frequently here on this show. So look for the latest Barbecue Central show in 10 minutes or less. You can subscribe to this show and to the Best Moments show by going to this portion of the website, thebbqcentralshow.com/subscribe. And don't forget, if you want to hear a guest or segment that you think's been lost in the archives, you can email our friend John Solberg, at thebbqcentralshow.com. That's Jon at thebbqcentralshow.com, and he will do his best to meet your expectations. And now, friends, neighbors, and or otherwise, I told you I would talk about it. If you are going to New York City in search of burgers, specifically burgers coming out of Hamburger America, which could be Burger USA. That might be one of his books. Hamburger America. You're in for a treat because we have an in-depth review from burger expert, foodie lover, live fire lover, fan of the show, one of my great friends. And did I mention he happens to be the executive producer of the Barbecue Central Show, Jason Kaplan. And I'm going to get right into it because, as I said, extensive. Greg finally got a chance to eat lunch at Hamburger America, George Motz's burger place in New York City. Been looking forward to going since before it opened and was upset it took me this long to get there, but better late than never. Here's the review. Let's go right to the bottom line. Let's start the most important part, the food. Bottom line. It was about as perfect a smash burger and French fries that you could ask for. This is exactly what I would expect from George Motz. His place delivers. So, great review right off the top. Now we get into the menu. Love that the menu barely had any options on it. Fried onion burger, classic smash burger, single, double, or triple patties plus toppings, a few non-burger sandwich options if you're insane enough to go to a George Motz restaurant that has burgers and you don't want burgers, you have some options there. You want a beer? Great. They got one. Miller High Life, the champagne of beers. They also have a few milk and chocolate milk options, soda, of course, and then my favorite, the Brooklyn Egg Cream. More on that here in a second. They also have 3 desserts, a pie, a chocolate chip cookie, and they also have cookies and milk. I cannot describe to you how freeing limited choices can be. I ordered the double classic smash burger with the works, fries, egg cream, done out. Thank you very much. They do have some off-menu items that you can request that I know about. If you want a patty melt, which New York Times claims is having a comeback, you can ask for the Chester. Now, food in more detail. The smash burger, which Motz did much to popularize, is pretty simple at the end of the day. That means you have to cook it perfectly and prepare it perfectly for it to stand out. Hamburger America hits that out of the park. I don't know what to say. It was perfect. The bite was perfect. The mouthfeel perfect. The crust on the patties, the cheese, the bun. And getting it with the works didn't mean that it came with a ton of stuff. It was mustard, chopped onions, and pickles on the bottom of the bun, where were all I could discern. I'm a big ketchup guy. This is Jason talking. And I was halfway through the burger when I realized I hadn't put any ketchup on the burger. I went to reach for it, but then pulled back because why mess with perfection? To belabor this point anymore, if you've ever seen the great movie The Menu, this is the burger you are imagining Anaya Joy Taylor is eating. Fries are in the shoestring style, not my favorite, but not sure he's done it. Not sure how he's done it. These fries taste like I remember McDonald's fries used to taste in the 1980s. Just crunchier, hotter, and better. Again, no ketchup. I did try it with ketchup, but the ketchup took away from the yumminess of the fries alone, if you can believe it. For the drink, he got the chocolate egg cream. This is something I love with a burger. I lived in Brooklyn when I first got my job in 2001 and would often eat at a local diner, really lunch counter, and was enamored by the Brooklyn egg cream, as it was called, when I ordered it. If you've never had an egg cream, the best way to describe it is like a milkshake, but with seltzer in place of the milk. It does have milk in it, but seltzer is the overwhelming texture you get. Sounds weird, I get it, but bear with me. A cheeseburger with a milkshake sound, in theory, delicious together, but like peanut butter and jelly, and they are, but you eat a good cheeseburger, you drink a great milkshake for lunch, and what are you left with? The rest of your afternoon is completely ruined. You're bloated, you're tired, you're swearing that you'll never do it again. Another food pairing like this, fried chicken and waffles, on paper sounds like a really great idea. In reality, you're left feeling like Veruca Salt at the end of her Wonka tour. A gigantic bloated mess. The egg cream, you get the chocolatey milkshake taste without the bloat afterwards. So keep that into account as you visit there. The rest, little bit of a criticism here. Not a fan of the layout of the restaurant. You walk into chaos. Thankfully, it's not super busy. When I went, I probably would have walked right out if it would have been a different time and a lot more crowded. It's just confusing, and the staff, all super nice, not proactively helping. When you first walk in, you walk into a burger counter, the stools, all right there out in front of you. Is this where we sit? Do we wait to be seated? No idea. Nobody's helping us. We were looking to sit anywhere. Nobody was coming to the burger counter. We go over there. They're pointing to the order. Since there were no seats at the counter, we went and stood where she pointed. My confusion, I went over to the area. It did say, order here on a sign. But it was right at the desk at the cash register. It seems a little bit confusing. However, for as unintuitive as the logistics are getting into it, the payoff, you're going for the burger, right? 4.9 stars out of 5, according to Jason. It's a must visit. Jason, thank you so much, my friend. Taking huge time out of his busy day from being executive producer of the Howard Stern Show to write the Barbecue Central Show, an in-depth review of Hamburger America. I got to go now. On the strength of that alone, if you're headed to New York City, now you got to go. I want to hear your review, too. Is it going to be as good as Jason's? Probably not. Few would be. He's a professional. Doug Scheiding's ready to go. Before we get to him, we're talking about Primo Grills. Evidently, the double XL Primo that I saw a year ago at the HPB Expo wasn't ready for sale at that point. They were just showing it off. I have it on good authority that within the next month, we're going to be seeing for retail the Primo Grills XXL. Big grill. Malcolm Reed just got his hands on one last week. I'm sure he's going to be doing some videos there. Maybe Primo has already posted some videos of that to get a little hype going. Here's what you need to know. Primo Grill right now is the only ceramic cooker where you can effectively achieve a 2-zone fire. Can the others say they can do it? I mean, you can bank coals off to one side if you want, call it 2-zone. But with the oval design, you're able to achieve a real 2-zone fire. You bank the coals off of one side because of the shape. You've really left yourself a vacant area, not by the heat at all, especially when you're using deflector plates and all that stuff. It's a can't miss. They have accessories that will boggle your mind and really complete your Primo Grill experience. However, they're only sold through dealers. So find one near you, primogrill.com. And then once you find one, visit the dealer in person, touch and feel all the ovals, as I tell you each and every week, and then buy the one that fits best your needs and budget. I recommend XL always, at a minimum. Again, nobody has ever complained about having something that's too big. Just ask my wife. But I've heard a lot of people be a little ticked that they didn't buy big. They bought with their financial eye goggles on first. Don't do that. Don't fall victim to that. Primogrill.com. Nick Bauer will be on in about a month's time to talk about that XXL as well. We are back with Doug Scheiding from Row Cookers talking about getting into the rub business. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Howard Stern, Jim Rome, Dan Patrick, and Greg Rempe. The Mountain Rushmore of talk show entertainment. Now, let's get back to the Barbecue Central Show.
All right, welcome back. This portion of the show being brought to you by Pit Barrel Cooker, the most unbelievable outdoor cooking device on the planet. It's currently available in 3 sizes. It's got a host of accessories. Doesn't matter if you're a beginner or professional. It's a cooker you want to add to the arsenal. You visit pitbarrelcooker.com and tell them the Barbecue Central Show sent you. We're happy. Jimmy Shotwell, our pal. Oh, look at here. Jimmy Shotwell giving us the numbers. Memphis in May has 143 teams registered for this year's event. Smoke Slam is about, what is that? A little less than 3 times under that at 59. Sub 60, if we want to say it a different way. That's what you do in radio when you're giving time. You say, like right now, it's 10:15 Eastern, 45 minutes to the top of the hour, everybody. And coming on is Lolita with It's My Party. Yeah. All right, enough of that. Joining me in the lead of the second hour, someone you hear pitch the show on the 4th Tuesday of every month in the second hour during the Embedded Correspondence segment. Our longest running EC, by the way, from Texas. He is also a very accomplished competition cook, a contractor for Traeger Grills. You've seen him pull solo segments on the show before, talking about social media growth, winning Houston Livestock and Rodeos, and all this other stuff. But tonight, we talk about the recent launch of his rub and how he got here. We welcome back our pal, Barbecue Central Show's guest Hall of Famer and pitmaster of Rogue Cookers, Doug Scheiding. Dougie, before we get going here tonight, we have a YouTube poll question of the week, which I'm sure you voted in. I asked everybody, including all guests, do you like curry, yes or no?
If it was an assurity question, I would say absolutely yes.
Yes, all right. 56% of people are still saying yes, they like curry, so it flipped from the no's to the yeses as we turn to the second hour. And appreciate your insight there. Unbeknownst to me, because I only listen to 40% of the show as it's happening live, and sometimes I miss it when I go for the re-listen on the next day driving into work, I missed the fact that you were getting ready to launch rubs into the market. So why bother getting into this portion of the business when there are so many rubs out there current?
There are so many, and I used to say there's so many. And going back a little bit of history, I used to make my own rubs. You know, I had a Chipotle, cherry rub that I used on my ribs. I used to make my barbecue brisket rub.
So these were homemade rubs, not for
yeah, these
sale.
are homemade rubs.
Right,
and then my cherry Chipotle ribs started tasting differently. I still contracted down to a different paprika that my local barbecue supplier was using, and it totally changed my ribs. And so then I became, I'm going to use commercial rubs, and then I'll mix them, and they should taste the same from batch to batch. And that made it a lot more consistent for me. So why in the world would anybody want to come out with a rub?
So what's the catalyst? Does somebody approach you to do this, or are you getting into a mindset where, okay, well, why would I? Well, maybe now I do. So now I'm going to find a partner.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did have a company, a Texas company, approach me, and I thought about it, and I decided no. But then, as you know, I'm a ambassador for Head Country, and a paid consultant to them, and so they strongly encouraged me to come up with a rub or set of rubs.
Head Country did?
Head Country did, yes.
Why?
Well, I didn't know. Well,
they have
I didn't know
rubs.
Exactly. Yeah,
Good
they
ones.
have rubs.
Yeah.
They have really good ones,
Yeah.
and I use them. They have great sauces,
Great.
and I use them. Well, unbeknownst to me, this was all part of the process. They were getting bought out by Old World Spice, and I didn't know it. And so they wanted me to come in and be a part of their barbecue spots pitmaster program. And so that was kind of the groundwork of why they wanted me to be a part of that and come out with my own rubs.
What's the program? I'm not familiar with it.
They have a program of about 30 pitmasters. Barbecue Spot does, and if you go to their website,
is Barbecue Spot a business?
Yeah, it's actually the online web presence for Old World Spice.
Oh,
Sterling Ball.
Okay. Got
Sterling
it.
Ball is on there, Gillespie, Luton Booty and Blazing Star, Mike and stuff. So there's 30. And Meathead actually is on there as well, if you recall.
Yes. Oh, yes. I recall. Plenty.
I'm sure Sterling's been to your ear a few times too, but yes.
Did you have rub recipes ready to go, or did you now have to go to work on some rubs?
Yes, and kind of. I definitely had a brisket recipe that I've used for years, and it's done well. I've got a second and a fourth at the San Antonio Rodeo with it out of 300 teams, and so I took that and just tweaked it a little bit and played with it, and that's what I've been using for the last year and a half or so on brisket. Got a first place last summer with it as well. So the all-purpose seasoning, I did have to come up with a rub for that, but I had the basis of one that I had used in the past. It's a little different than more chili powder in my all-purpose, less smoked paprika than the brisket. And Doug's Dust, I wanted a stinking finishing dust because we in competition we like to use White Lightning is great and dominates the steak, right? This mine is a paprika based, and it's built for barbecue, and so you can put it on after you glaze and you hardly notice it. And so that's but it's loaded with MSG.
So is your brisket rub the commercial recipe that you've made? Like you bought commercial rubs, put them together and make your brisket rub, or was this a homemade brisket rub that you had recipe?
This was using the base of one rub and then adding 3 ingredients to it, and in various proportions. So I actually played with that for about 6 months and finalized it, and then the all-purpose I actually played with a little more. The brisket I think is good on all red meat. Some people have used it on pork and salmon as well, but and done well. But the all-purpose I think is great on chicken and ribs.
How many are out right now?
Well, the Texas brisket is out. This last week, the brisket actually went into full production. Because it was originally just made for Home Depot, the brisket rub was, and then the Doug's Dust went into production last week, and the all-purpose missed on Friday, but so it's going to be in production in the next week or so. And apparently it has to go through a 48-hour hold or something for USDA or something like that before it goes to the warehouse. So it'll be at the Barbecue Spot warehouse within the next couple weeks.
When did Head Country tell you should start getting some stuff together? Has this been years ago?
Yeah, probably 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, probably 2 years ago.
So how long does it go to, or how long does it take to go from first idea, first sample to ready to sell? Is it longer than 2 years, or are we all still within the same time frame there?
I would think if you short circuited it, let's say if you already had your rub ready to go, you could get it done in 6 to 8 months. I think if you went with a smaller co-packer, Old World Spice, is it's the big gorilla to a certain degree, but it took a little longer for me because it took a little longer for me because I had to work on a rub, and so that was 6 to 8 months there.
Let's talk about the major steps. So you get your recipes ready, and now you're going to be sending the recipe off to the manufacturer. Let's talk about those steps and how that eventually gets you to a product that you're comfortable with selling. How does that transpire? And what are the big hiccups? Because we always, whenever I have these conversations, the one that always seems to recur is, this is my recipe, these are the ingredients, and maybe I'll bend on some, but I don't want to bend on others. And then the co-packer's like, well, if you don't bend on these, then it's going to cost this much, and that might show them they're not going to be moving. And so there's all these great internal struggles and sacrifices that you might have to make to get this thing to be a viable business portion. So what are those steps for you?
Right. So you have to come up with your rubs. So in my case, that was, 6 or 8 months. And we can revisit the question later in the show if we have time. But as you know, I had a health issue that factored into this whole thing. So where I had colon cancer, and so I was actually very patient during the whole process. So that actually kind of slowed some things down. But going back on track, the normal process is get your recipes, then you provide them to the co-packer. You provide them to the co-packer, and the co-packer actually tries to match them. So they'll come up with the blend. They've got their, brainiacs that, the chemistry people send it off, send it back to you. You taste it and you say, that's pretty close, but you need to add this, or you need to do this. And then maybe they'll send. So the all-purpose, they got that in 2. The brisket, they got it in 3 rounds. My Doug's Dust, it took 5 rounds, and then they just sent me some extra ingredients, which I told them they were missing, and of what they were using, because the MSG I was using was different than their powdered MSG, and the paprika is different than their paprika, and so you use actually different varying amounts. And so the 6th time, I basically just reiterated myself and finally came up with what they needed to add on the 2 ingredients that I thought they were missing.
So how long does that take in total?
Oh, that probably took 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
That took months. And then, there's other things. Trademarks. I wanted to file for some trademarks. So, I've got Rogue Cookers trademarked. I've got Rogue Rubs trademarked. I've got Doug's Dust trademarked. I used Suzanne, for that. So
Suzanne Moskowitz, yes.
Moskowitz, friend of the show.
Moskowitz,
and yeah, exactly. Used got a website going. So I've got a website. I've got a cart ready to go. And so you got to finalize that. Then once everything's approved, you got to get labels. So it's on you to, to get labels designed. And so that takes, 2 or 3, months. And yep. So Low, Slow, and Rogue, that's trademarked. But so you need to go through that. And then the co-packer needs to finalize the ingredients that are going to be used, the scan code and all of that. So it takes a while.
Any major fights with the co-packer about ingredients or anything like that?
No, it was just got a little frustrated with the Doug's Dust, but and luckily I didn't have to sacrifice anything. Luckily.
An Old World or Barbecue Spot is in charge of getting these rubs into retailers' hands, or they put together like tests or pilot markets to do this? How does that go from a warehouse into somewhere where they can actually be sold?
That's the key question on who you choose, right? Because if you choose a smaller co-packer and that's all they do, and they're really just packing it for you and then shipping it to you, and you're going to do your own fulfillment, you're going to do your own promotion, etc., that's a harder road to go, in my opinion. Old World Spice, once they have the distribution channels, they've got contacts at Academy, Ace, Home Depot, the large stores. A lot of people already have Old World Spice accounts. So if you're a SKU in their system, they can order right off. Another thing, in the Barbecue Pitmaster program, they actually front the inventory. So I get, paid off of what the sales are, and I don't have to invest the money. If I was going through with a small co-packer, maybe I'd have to pay for 1,000 bottles or 500 bottles or whatever the price break is, right? So no, I've got a pricing that's already set up, but that's one of the big things that Old World Spice does is they have a full-time salesperson that that's actually at Ace Hardware at their show this week.
If you had to do the investing yourself, something that you would take on? You feel confident you could go and make calls and get your rubs into stores where it would be, I don't know, like a banging business, but you're selling what you're bringing in. You're housing them in some kind of a storage unit or whatever the hell. Or if you had to do that, you probably wouldn't be so attracted.
No, I wouldn't be attracted to it because it'd have to be temperature controlled. Who knows? It'd probably have to be, if you're doing everything legit, FDA.
You could probably make more
approved
money at it, right?
Yeah, you probably could. You probably could. But I think getting in and approved by HEB as a chain, of grocery stores or whatever, I think that's a long process, to get in. And so Home Depot went to Old World Spice after I went and did demos at Memphis MA, and I'll be back there again this year for Home Depot. And they liked my brisket rub. I cooked for the executive team. They liked my demo. And so then they went to Old World Spice and says, is he part of your program? We know he's part of Head Country. They said, yes. They said, you're going to make his rub for us. And so that's why they did it. And they said that was unheard of, that even before production or even in the first year and a half, to be able to get into a large chain store. And so they just the awareness, because if they have a portfolio of 30 brands, maybe they've heard of 10 and haven't heard of 20. And so that actually helped, was very beneficial in my, my name's not Tuffy Stone or Myron Nixon.
Outside of Old World doing whatever they're doing from a marketing standpoint, are you able to try and sell into stores? In other words,
absolutely,
mom and pop shops,
yes,
regional locations, stuff like that.
Yep.
Are you on that right now, or you can do it and you haven't done it yet?
Because it's taken a while. I am waiting for the actual bottles to be in the warehouse and a SKU, and for them to be up for sale on Barbecue Spot's website. But absolutely.
What's the goal?
That's a good question. I would like some mailbox money. I think more importantly, I'd like to build my brand a little bit more. And so, raise the awareness of my brand. And I think, I'm able to do that, because when I go to events and having rubs and, that means a lot more to other people and stuff. And so it's actually been kind of a fun process, from a creative standpoint, coming up with the rubs and then using them. So I still use some other commercial rubs, but I'm primarily using my rubs right now.
You have no huge investment into this then, like labels and stuff like that, or does Old World do all that too?
No. I have to pay. Yeah. Well, I had to pay for the design.
Labels, trademarks, the design, the barcode.
Yeah, they actually print the labels because they want to make sure it's a certain quality, let's say, and it has the the shiny sheen to it. And so they wanted that in their domain. So I'm probably into it about 3,000, maybe 4,000. Because I got insurance, I got commercial insurance, and that's another reason to go with a large company. If you go with a smaller co-packer, they don't have the insurance that the large chain is going to require. Pick a number, 5 million, 8 million. I don't know what Home Depot's is, but that's a large number from an insurance standpoint to insure. So a smaller co-packer is not going to have that, and that'll prohibit you from actually getting in there unless you front the money yourself for the insurance.
Where do you see it in 2 years?
I would like to be in a couple of chains. It's hard to compete. When I go places and cook, I would like for the local store, like the Ace Hardware, et cetera, to be able to sell my rubs, because I'm there. Those people will know my name. So, do I have grand visions that, I'm going to make tons and tons of money off this?
You want to be like as big as Malcolm, Heath, and Cosmo?
That would certainly be a goal. I don't know if I've really thought that through as an official goal, but that would be certainly something. But am I doing barbecue full time? No, hell, I've got 2 other jobs, but I'm, but at, the Houston rodeo this year, I mentally quit one of the jobs. So, so there's going to come a time when I'm down to 2, and then barbecue is going to be much more of a focus, but life's short, time's short. You got to live it now.
You quickly blew past it said that you had a bout with colon cancer. What happened?
Yeah, and thanks for being the spokesman. You're probably one of the 30 people that I told. And I just wanted to be more of a personal journey, so it happened, it was July 15th, 2022 is, excuse me, is when I got the phone call. I went in July 13th, no symptoms, had a friend of mine that had a few issues with his colon and things. And he went in and he found out that he had some problems and it wasn't colon cancer, but it was other things. And so I thought I'll go in, and because I had a referral, they never called me. And so finally I pressed them during COVID and got in. So it, found out, had surgery August 6th. And then my first chemo, and it was stage 3 only because it was in my lymph nodes. It was very self-contained, hadn't even perfed the wall. And, but it was in my lymph nodes. And so I had to do 12 rounds of chemo. So I think I did about 5 months on the show, and I could hear my voice crackling, and, I wore a hat and stuff like that. So go in and get a colonoscopy. My surgeon said that over 25 to 30% of her patients are less than, did she say 40? I think she might've said 40. So certainly less than 50. So, and I waited till I was over 55, 56.
Right now, cancer-free, feeling good, looking good.
Yeah, thankfully, yes.
Good.
Yeah, thankfully, yes. So I had several things that were driven, by a higher power, and certainly that all helped me. So, and I appreciate you advocating for people going and getting colonoscopies.
Absolutely.
I know I kind of push you in that direction, and if we can together save a few people, or to catch it early, that's the key. You got to catch it early. So,
and it's easy stuff. It's easy stuff.
I still have my port in me, but because 2 years, you got to make it. Yeah, you got the port. So it comes up here in my neck. So, but you've got 2 years to make it, and then that's when your odds go up a lot for longevity.
Doug, appreciate the insight on the rub stuff, and appreciate you being so candid about your diagnosis with cancer and then kicking its ass, which we certainly appreciate. And we'll see you in 2 weeks as we welcome our pal Sam, the cooking guy, as a guest sit-in for the Embedded Correspondent.
Yes.
So who knows if we'll even talk about anything we want to talk about.
Right. Well, who knows if we'll even get any words in edgewise between
Sam
the two
answering
of you.
any and all questions for everybody. I feel like that might happen. Doug, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Hey.
There's Dougie right there. Doing well, looking good, and yeah, I mean, it's. I'll continue to advocate for it, and as Doug said, he wanted to keep that in a tight group, which I can certainly appreciate on many levels. Let's talk about Franklin Barbecue Pits before we get to Smokin' Joe. He's in the green room, ready to rock. This is the backyard version of the famed pit built by Aaron Franklin for his renowned barbecue restaurant in Austin, Texas, Franklin Barbecue. Built for those barbecue purists who want to take their craft to the next level. What you have with the Franklin Barbecue Pit is a deeply thought out and refined version of the propane-style pits that Aaron uses in his restaurant. Stylistically, it reflects the kind of bare-bones industrial handmade aesthetic that he loves, as in the patina, and the way he allows you to see the welds and the craftsmanship as they're built. Now, the schematics of a Texas offset pit are relatively simple, but the things that are happening inside complicated. Their dynamics of physics and chemistry, very few moving parts. Numerous and massive differences divide the Franklin Barbecue Pit and the average barbecue smoker sold in the big box store for one. Much of the challenge of building these pits come from the thickness and heaviness of the materials. Also, most of the value is created there as well. Cheap offset smokers are made with thin metal. Not only does cheap metal tend to warp and crack when sustained the kind of heat you need to make great briskets, but even on a cold day, that thin metal just sheds the heat, struggles to maintain the constant temperature. The Franklin Barbecue Pit, mostly quarter-inch American-made steel. It's strong. Anything that sees heat, engineered to be incredibly solid. should last a century or more if cared for properly. If you're in the market for a premier offset pit, here we go. FranklinBBQPits.com. That's FranklinBBQPits.com. And if you're somebody that owns a retail store and you'd like to bring a Franklin barbecue pit in there, Jimmy Shotwell, I see you. You go to FranklinBBQPits.com, fill out the dealer form, or tell them you would like to become a dealer or at least have some conversations. And Matt Gase will give you a shout, try and set something up with you. And now you have the silent salesman on the floor, right? Beautiful offset-looking pit. So even if you're on the phone talking to a customer, somebody walks in, they walk around it, they see the welds, they open the door, they see the deflector plate that's in the main cooking chamber, all the stuff that you've come to know and love about a Franklin barbecue pit, all right there on the floor. Become a dealer if you're not, and if you're not near a dealer, go to the website. You can buy one directly. It's shipped right to the end of the driveway. We are back with Joe Martinez to hash it all out. What is going on? We're closed. We're open. Are we? I don't know. Smoking Joe's next.
You're listening to the Barbecue Central Show. Whole packers, full racks, legs and thighs, injecting butts. If you've never heard this before, you might think you found the best XXX show ever. Let's get back to the most homoerotic host out there today, Greg Rempe.
And we thank Doug Scheiding for joining us last segment. RogueCookers.com, his website. And at some point, that cart will be available on his website where you can buy online, I would imagine. This portion of the show being brought to you by JRE Tobacco, makers of Aladino cigars. Of course, huge fan of the Corojo Reserva line. Love the Aladino Classic. Really love the Sumatra as well. Bottom line, the Aroa family demonstrates their expertise time and time again in mastering hard-to-grow tobacco varieties and then blending them into a smoking experience that is second to none. Even as a growing and learning appreciator of the fine tobacco leaf as myself, you can get samples from me if you want. Send me an email, greg@thebbqcentralshow.com, and I can send you some JRE Aladino cigars out, and then you can tell me what you think of those. So we appreciate the good folks over at JRE Tobacco. Coming on next month, by the way, for no less than 2 segments. Justo Aroa is the guy that's running the shop out there, and he'll stop by and talk about it. Hey, coming out of the bullpen tonight is someone who has led the show open the past 2 weeks. He was the subject of the 2023 Barbecue Central Show's Podumentary. He has gone out of his way the past 2 weeks to try and confuse me and make me look like a total douche. So let's stop that and get the straight information from the man himself. We welcome back our friend Joe Martinez. Joe, we have a YouTube poll question of the week that we're asking everybody in YouTube and all guests. Do you like curry? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Yes. 59% of the voting public is saying yes, so we're growing to almost a 20% differential. Joe, 2 weeks ago, you posted a video on your YouTube channel announcing that Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue was closed.
How dare you?
Then, 2 days later, Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue open for business.
We'll do it live.
Yeah.
And it was back open again this past weekend, and I'm trying to figure out the best question to ask. What the fuck?
Yeah, the timing of everything, how it went down, kind of almost like I closed and then reopened, or opened before I closed. It seems like the story is a little confusing, and I'm even confused. I had to write things down just to catch myself. But I'll give you a quick timeline. So the food truck, my last day of service was January the 20th. On January the 24th, I announced that I had closed the food truck. I posted on social media, closed until further notice. I had some things, personal things come up with my family that I had to attend to. So, the food truck was closed. As far as the video, that video I recorded on February the 5th. Okay. And I recorded the video and I wasn't going to release it. I just didn't feel, comfortable releasing it. It almost felt like I was making excuses of why I closed. But then I was like, you know what? There's so many people that are vested into my YouTube channel that I felt that I owed it to them. So I released the video.
How would they even know you made it, though? If you never released it, nobody knows. You only know that.
Yeah. So on a
Fuck
local
those
level,
people.
I was getting on a local level, I was getting a ton of phone calls from people. Hey, are you guys open? Are you guys open? Are you closed? Are you open? So on February the 21st, I posted that we were going to reopen the food truck. Remember, I recorded this video on February the 5th. Now, on the 27th of February, I released the video. So that's where the confusion was, because I had posted that I'm reopening, but then on the 27th, I posted that video that closed the reasons why I closed my food truck.
Yep.
And then we opened up on March the 1st. And that video, when I released it, got so much attention. It's like 350,000 views on YouTube, which is ridiculous. Here I am cooking barbecue for people, and the video that gets the absolute most attention is the one of me closing my food truck.
So to put it in context for the folks that maybe don't follow your YouTube channel, I went back over the last 6 months, and we're holding the announcement of the food truck closing to the side for a second. In the last 6 months, you haven't seen better than 50,000 YouTube views on any video that you've released in the past 6 months. Now, to put that in perspective, I would gnaw my own arm off to get 50,000 views on a Barbecue Central show video at some point. However, you look at the announcement of the video or the food truck closing, as you said, 350,000 views. I'll sit here and tell you right now, there's a part of me that thinks you're just trying to run up the YouTube numbers, and you knew this thing was going to be a shit kicker, and you just released it. You had no intention of closing the food truck in the first place.
Yeah, no, the food truck was closed for about a month and a half. That's the part that people don't see. It was kind of it was a spontaneous thing. I had to really pay attention to what we had going on. Again, on that video, I kind of talk about the things that led to me closing my food truck. It's not just the personal family issue that we had. There was a lot that led to that. And I even thought about releasing a video of the timeline, because it is confusing, and some people follow me on social media and they follow me on YouTube as well, and they are confused just like you were. Your email that you sent out about your show tonight said that I was closed for 38 minutes or whatever, which I thought was hilarious. Yeah, but it was a month and a half that I actually closed my food truck.
All right, let's play a game real quick. Did one of these two things happen? Your brother quit the food truck, or you fired your brother?
No.
Your chef quit the truck, or you fired your chef?
No.
Wow. It's insane. All right. So what's the family issue that's going on that pulls you away? You left a very stable, I'm going to make up a word. I'm not even going to make up that word because it sounds so stupid. You were in your career very long to do this food truck. So for you to leave what is in essence, let's call it the quote unquote money maker, that does have to be a pretty heavy thing. So what's going on in Joe Martinez's life to have to pull away from the truck?
Yeah, it was, I'm going to keep that kind of private, Greg. I mean, I know that I share a lot of things with you guys. Issue
it's not a contest, but Doug just shared he had cancer.
I know. That's here. Doug is sharing that information, and I know it sounds like I'm trying to keep stuff from you, but I'm not. It's just, some things I'd like to keep to myself. And, it was something pretty serious enough for me to lead to making that decision to close my food truck. It was an emergency that
health stuff?
I just had to deal with. Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Health related.
Not you,
but no, not me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, not me. I'm good. But that's what it was. And, I had to pay attention to it. Family first. I mentioned that in the video, my YouTube video, that family always comes first. And, if if I wasn't as far as running the business, the barbecue business specifically, and I just had this one certain issue, I could have dealt with it. But with everything just piling up on me, it was a huge monkey on my back. Things were just piling up on me that just did it, that just said, that happened. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm closing it down. Let me deal with this. I'm not worried about the food truck right now. I'm not worried about anything else but my family. And, once things settled down, I decided to go ahead and talk about reopening the business. But obviously I made some changes.
And your brother and the chef are still there?
So my chef had quit probably 2-3 weeks before I shut down.
Oh.
Yeah.
Greener grass on the other side of the road, or
I don't
ended
know.
up being a douche, or what?
Yeah, it was one of those things that no notice, hey, today's my last day. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. But again, my brother and I ran that thing by ourselves and we were perfectly fine. Hell, my brother could run it by himself now.
Yeah.
But I was okay with it. So it has nothing to do with that, in fact, the way that we have things running now, it's I don't really have to be there. I'm just there for quality control pretty much. But my brother's doing everything, and I've got a cashier that's also helping with the prep stuff. So, things are working really good, and I kick myself in the butt for not doing this at the very beginning. I think I just started with such a big menu, and that's probably not the main reason why I closed, but that would have helped if I would have done that at the beginning.
And so I want to talk about that here, but let me back out on this chef thing for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had a number of conversation with folks who listen to, I'm not starting these are people coming at me, because people always love to ask me about guests. I don't know what the fuck that's all about, but I've had a number of these conversations, and your segments last year especially, who are endlessly fascinated with the fact that you had both a pitmaster and your brother. And does your brother have a name, by the way? I keep calling him your brother.
Yeah, Marty's his name.
Marty, right?
Yeah, Marty.
So you have Marty as the pitmaster, and then you have this executive chef on payroll. And how you were able to afford both without going broke. For instance, Rusty Monson has told me that if he hired an executive chef, it would put him directly out of business. And he's done really well. More revenue, number-wise, like top line. I don't know what it all nets out to him and where yours nets out, but top line revenue does more than you. So how were you able to do this when Rusty can't even entertain it?
Yeah, so I was pretty fortunate. The chef that I had didn't come in asking for a ton of money. She was never really, she had worked at a restaurant in Austin, and she actually she went to school with Evan from Leroy and Lewis. They were classmates in culinary school. So she worked at a restaurant, but then aside from that, she wasn't in the restaurant business. So she didn't come in asking for a ton of money, and I think that was the reason why I was able to afford, having her on board. And she was great while she was there, but again, whatever she had going on, whatever personal issues she had going on, from one day to the next, she just decided that wasn't, the job for her. And, when that happened, obviously, well, now I had a little bit more, better payroll because I didn't have that salary, even if it's, $27,000 a year, whatever it was, I didn't have that I had to pay out anymore.
Let's talk about the menu. When I'm talking to people getting into food truck or restaurant business, we always talk about the menu. We always talk about the lure of wanting to be all things to all people. And especially in the barbecue scene, it seems like you should have 9 things on a menu. But you can go to a lot of barbecue restaurants, and it's like going to Cheesecake Factory. They give you a friggin' Bible, and it's like page after page after page, or board after board after board of stuff that I don't even know how many times a week you would make it. How do you fall into trying to be all things to all people? Is it because of YouTube's success and wanting to showcase your cooking ability? Is there ego involved? What are the biggest things?
I think it's D, all of the above, to be honest with you, Greg. I tried to, because I was a YouTuber, I think that was a pretty big thing. One of my goals was to be on Texas Monthly, which I made, the top 25 new barbecue joints in Texas. And I'm very proud of that. And that's something that I was chasing, but not really, that wasn't my only goal. It would have been nice to be in the top 50 list. Right. And I think I was definitely heading in the right direction. And I'm not giving up on that dream either, but I wanted to be a barbecue business in a food truck, and that just does not make sense if you think about it. All the proteins that you've got to cook, all the sides, the desserts. I mean, my menu was probably larger than a lot of barbecue joints in Texas. And because I wanted that, if somebody wanted a beef rib when they came to my food truck, I wanted to supply it. If they wanted smoked turkey, if they wanted pork belly burnt ends, you wanted one of my 6 sides or 5 sides. I forget how many I had. It was just too much. So I wanted to be, the barbecue joint, just like going to some of these big barbecue joints in Texas. And that's the wrong thing. Personally, I think that's the wrong thing. I should have never done that. But then the menu kept growing. I said, hey, well, we've got some leftover brisket. Let's make some tacos. But making tacos, well, now I'm making flour tortillas. Now I've got to spend more money to get these other ingredients, and I'm creating more work for myself. So it's just the snowball effect, but I think that we fixed that for now.
How are you able to get your hands around it and corral it into a much more pared down and manageable menu? Do you just look over what's most popular and keep that more or less?
Yes. So I was able to go into the point of sale system that I've got, and it breaks all of the menu items down, and it'll tell me exactly how many of this item I sold. And I was taking a look at my most popular items. It wasn't my platter. Yeah, my platters were up there, but the most popular thing is a brisket sandwich. And then we had other things like a Texas grilled cheese. It's a brioche Texas toast with toasted on both sides with brisket and cheddar cheese. It was amazing. So, those items that were top sellers are still on my menu today. The Texas tater, which is a loaded baked potato, that's a hot item, and that made it on our menu, and I'm keeping that. So, I condensed my menu down to 2 proteins, pretty much brisket and pulled pork. And with those 2 proteins, I'm able to make the barbecue sandwiches. Because we're trimming briskets, well, I've got some meat left over. Well, I can still make my smash burgers. And then obviously we're offering 2 different smash burgers on my menu. So, a lot of customers still come and ask for ribs and banana pudding and mac and cheese. But, my menu is what it is, and it's going to stay like that for a while.
At the end of 2023, the podumentary that you graciously participated in, you told me that under no uncertain terms, you would be in a brick and mortar location in 2024. How's that declaration aging as we sit here mid-March of 2024?
Well, the first quarter is not over yet, Greg. I think I said the first quarter of 2024.
I'm giving you a little leash. I was thinking during the course of the year.
No, I said the first quarter. My plan is to still find a brick and mortar location, but it's not something that I'm pressed to find right now. But I am going to find a brick and mortar. When that happens, I will bring back my old menu, which is, a solid menu, I think. But in the food truck, it's just not something that's going to happen right now.
If it's going to work in the food truck, why are you going to bring everything back? Fuck that. You're just going to be, and now you're inside. Daniel Vaughn's going to be happy that he's not too hot or not too cold, but you still have a menu that's generating it's giving you the margin that you want. Maybe add ribs and add the banana pudding, but don't go back to all that other stuff. Why would you do that?
Well, again, I want to be a traditional style Texas barbecue joint where you can get all the menu items that I had before. And part of the problem in the food truck was I'm limited on space. I've got 1 food warmer. In a barbecue joint, I'll probably have 3 or 4 food warmers, and God willing, the customers to feed all that. that food too. But it comes down to space and prepping everything in the food truck, and it's a difficult thing to do everything inside of the food truck.
Let's have a revised outlook for Smoking Joe's Pit Barbecue 2024 for the next couple quarters, at least.
For the next couple of quarters, I'm gonna stick to my menu, run what I've got, but at the same time, I'm going to be looking for a brick and mortar location, a standalone building, even if it's an old warehouse, rundown building. That's what I'm going to look for. I'm going to continue to obviously post videos on my YouTube channel. That's because of the menu size, that's giving me more freedom to be a little bit more consistent with my YouTube videos as well. But the plan is the ultimate goal is still to open up a brick and mortar.
And we're well past any health, family stuff. We're full bore.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Thank goodness.
Have you had a colonoscopy, Joe?
No, but I went for my blood work. I went for my blood work this morning, and when I go back for the results, I'm gonna ask for that.
You demand it. Don't ask. You say, "Hey, some schmuck in Ohio is telling me I'm not asking for one. I'm telling you, give me the referral or schedule me or whatever." I went into my primary care lady, and I've never had a primary care physician until last December. And she's like, "Well, what else do you want to do?" I said, "I want to get a colonoscopy." And she said, "Really?" I said, "I can't wait." And she said, "Okay, well, let's get you set up." And then 2 months later, got it done, got the clean bill of health there, which is good. But obviously, as Doug said, prevention, and it seems to be getting diagnosed to dudes that are younger, well, women too, but it's not like 50 plus anymore. I mean, as Doug said, he's seeing more and more 40 and below. So I think you and I are both above 40, unfortunately. So next time you're on, you better have that colonoscopy. Otherwise, I'm really going to give it to you.
I'll tell you what, I'll see if they'll let my camera in and I'll record it, Greg.
I mean, we don't have to go that far. Your word is good with me. We're talking with Joe Martinez from Smoking Joe's Pit Barbecue in El Paso, Texas. He is open. The menu is limited, but it is a rockin' menu, so make sure that you head out that way and try some of his food out. Joe, appreciate the insight here tonight and setting the record straight, and we'll look for you again soon.
Thanks, Greg.
You got it. Joe Martinez right there. So if you were confused just like me, I'm at least unconfused. I'm still a little confused that he might want to bring back the full menu after we're in the... I'll talk about it now. Don't worry about it. We got plenty of time. Appreciate his insight and his candor there. Listen up, gang. Our friends at Big Papa Smokers have something special just for you, listeners of the show. Whether you're seasoned pitmaster or grilling newbie, Big Papa Smokers, your one-stop online shop for all things barbecue. From their championship rubs and mouth-watering sauces, essential accessories, they've got what you need to get your food to the next level. Here's the cherry on top. Big Papa Smokers offering the listeners of the Barbecue Central Show an exclusive deal. Use promo code REMPE at checkout. That's REMPE. And you get $10 off your next $50 purchase of rubs, sauces, and accessories. Imagine the possibilities. Evaluate your ribs with Big Papa Smokers Sweet Money. Add Big Papa's Desert Gold to your chicken, or better yet, pick up Double Secret and put it on your steak. Head on over to BigPapaSmokers.com and start shopping today. Don't forget, you can use promo code REMPE at checkout, REMPE, and claim your $10 off your next order of $50 or more. It's free money. Start saving today. Don't forget to check out Big Papa's full line of recipes at cookingwithbigpapa.com. And, of course, follow them on all social media platforms for amazing recipes. We're back to close the show right after this. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Let's get back to a guy who has more experience giving you his opinion than he actually has cooking. Once again, here's your host, Greg Rempe.
We thank Joe Martinez for joining us last segment and closing out the show here this evening. Again, he's open. El Paso, Texas, food truck looking to be in a brick and mortar still at some point in 2024. We'll see how that pans out. Last look at the poll here as we get ready to call it an evening. Do you like curry? 55% of you are saying yes, you do like curry. I am not in favor of the curry, but the majority, I'm usually not in line with the majority. Every once in a while on these, I am with the majority, but not usually, and tonight I am not. All the way back in the first hour, we had Meathead talking about meat being closer to the bone and being more flavorful. Not true. Then we had Robert Moss talking about if there was a first distinct Southern style barbecue cooking method. We talked about how it proliferated, how it changed, and introduction of barbecue pits. Great piece of barbecue history in Southern barbecue if you're interested in getting that in the replay or the re-listen. Second hour, Doug Scheiding talking about getting in the rub biz. Also promoting, get your colonoscopy. Him and I both doing that. Doug also unveiling for the first time that he battled and successfully did so with colon cancer. So good job, Doug. Way to do it. And closing out the show, Joe Martinez, Smokin' Joe's Pit Barbecue. Big show planned for you next week. So third Tuesday brings Wes Wright. We have a Daniel Vaughn in. It's full show. I just can't remember all the time, okay? But it's big. Really big. How do I always leave you? September 11th, 2001. I will never forget until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. This is your program host and proud U.S. American, Greg Rempe. Good night now.
This is Dion Blumenrader with Big Hoss One Sauce, and you're listening to the best show on all things barbecue with my man, Greg Rempe.